darling. Welcome back. Today I am buckling in for a long haul. We are watching the complete Five Nights at Freddy's story explained from Wendigoon. This one is a bit long. I've already got my popcorn. Go get yourself a snack, get you a drink, go to the potty if you need to. We're here for the long haul, okay? I'm very excited. I know loosely Five Nights at Freddy's lore. I feel like I kind of know what's going on, and I feel like this is gonna prove me wrong entirely. So I'm looking forward to learning some more. Maybe some things that I thought is true isn't, and it's gonna be corrected, different stuff like that. I just like learning stories and like really, really deep lore. I like that a lot, and I'm very, very, very excited, and I hope you are as well. If you are new here, please do consider subscribing. It'd really help me out, and I'd very, 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 very much appreciate it. Thank you. Also, check out our merch and use code BONE. I appreciate you. Thank you. Are you ready? Let's go.
So, I'm doing the thing. Okay. Unlike most of the horror series that I cover, I feel like today's horror series needs no introduction. Five Nights at Freddy's has quickly become one of the most popular video game IPs ever. Five Nights at Freddy's currently has 9 games in its main series, as well as over a dozen books written about it and countless fan games. Not only that, but even people who hate the games have to admit that it was probably the most impactful indie horror series of all time.
Yeah, it came out the gate like swinging really, really hard in my opinion.
And the craziest part about it is to this day, no one really knows what happened. Like, if you play through the games, it's very clear that there is a story happening in the background. However, the gameplay always takes center stage. And despite the countless Reddit threads and YouTube videos made on the topic, there still doesn't seem to be a clear answer of what happened in the games themselves. So I'm here to throw my hat in the ring and present to you what I believe to be the story of the Five Nights at Freddy's series. See, this video started out, I just wanted to cover the FNAF VHS tapes, because a couple people, specifically Squimpus McGrimpus, which is a funny name, has made fantastic horror set within the universe of Five Nights at Freddy's, but taking its own story direction with its own characters and events. However, after getting all of my research done for that, and then thinking how I would describe it to you all, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to someone who wasn't familiar with the Five Nights series. So I asked myself, what is the minimal amount of information I need to tell you about the Five Nights series in order for you to understand the VHS tapes? And that eventually devolved into me breaking down the entire story with all of the characters and major events. So I'm doing great. However, I'm only partially joking on that, because I do believe that the Five Nights at Freddy's storyline is a very interesting story that deserves to be told. However, if you're familiar with the series at all, then you probably know that the problem with telling the story is the story itself. See, the story of the game takes place across the first 7 entries. The games in chronological order, or at least my chronological order, because we can't even agree on when the games happened. But in my chronological order, it goes 4, 2, 1, 5, 3, 6, 7.
Okay.
Yeah. And the reason that it's so confusing for newcomers to the series to try to figure out what's going on is because anytime you search something like Five Nights at Freddy's Theory, you're greeted with videos from 5 years ago, whenever the 3rd game was out, so we didn't know the events in the 4th game were going to happen. But then the theories from the 4th game didn't know that the events of the 5th game were going to happen. So people kept trying to glue together a puzzle because all the pieces weren't out yet. But now I, in the future, with the privilege of hindsight, can put together the puzzle the way that I believe it was always meant to be viewed. And I'm going to do that in a kind of controversial way. I want this video to serve, again, not only as my take on the timeline for those out there who are a fan of the series, but also as an introductory point so that new people coming in are able to view all the information and better understand the story.
I feel like when this stuff was coming out as well, a lot of people state speculation as fact, and I feel like that's kind of their job if they're doing like theories and stuff like that, because if you're gonna come up with a theory, I feel like you, at least to some degree, have to believe it as well. So you're gonna like argue for your theory to be right, but like he's saying, you didn't know how X, Y, and Z from the next game was going to change all of that. So it's not a game theory. Shut up. It's oh, you guys made me lose my train of thought. It's it was just all speculation. And I feel like the games do get a little bit ludicrous here or there, and I'm sure we're going to go over it when he's like talking and explaining everything out. But as a person who was listening to all of this gameplay stuff and then what people thought were going to happen, it just became so popular and people loved it so much because it was so new and so different that I'm not even sure if I know which part was speculation and made up and what part was actually just lore and real. So I think going over this, I'm either going to be reminded a lot about the theories and different stuff and then actually taught lore. I think it's going to be both.
And when you look at the entire series as one narrative, I think it becomes far more interesting and far more terrifying. So in order to achieve both of those ends, and again, putting emphasis on the fact that this is a cool story that deserves to be told, I am simply not going to explain myself. At least not entirely explain myself. Like, several of the things on this board go against the majority of the community's interpretation of what happened. So whenever I have a real controversial take, I'm going to explain that. But like over here, I have one of William's children listed as being named Evan. In order for you to understand the story, I don't need to sit here for 10 minutes and tell you about we got the name Evan because in the survival book, which is an accompany book for the games, they found a series of numbers on one page and then added them together by the page number at the bottom and then went over to a letter grid and input those values and got the name Evan. Because if you're not familiar with the series, that's how we found out everything. And again, while I think stuff like that is cool, more people, at least currently, are focused on if his name's Evan or not, rather than the entire plot and story of what happened. And I think that the latter is far more interesting. So I know this has been a long introduction, but there's a lot to explain. As always, there's going to be timestamps in the description for what I'm describing, but I'm going to go through the timeline, or my opinion of the timeline, for the Five Nights at Freddy's video game series, as well as talk about the characters. And then from there, we will begin talking about the VHS tapes and the other YouTube horror shorts based around Five Nights at Freddy's, because I think they're really cool. And if any of this sounds cool to you, stick around after the ad as we're going to get into pretty much the entirety of the Five Nights at Freddy's series. But before you listen to me ramble for an absurd length of time, let's make sure you're listening the right way with today's sponsor, Raycon earbuds. With over 48,000 5-star reviews,
I'm thinking about it.
Raycon is the best audio quality and the best package available. Thanks to the rubberized oil design of Raycon earbuds, not only do they fit comfortably in your ear, but as you can see, they're very slim and discreet while you're wearing them.
I think they have an over ear I want to get.
Whenever I sit down at my computer to play video games or edit videos, I can just leave them in and it's never a problem. Not only that, but as you can see, Raycon earbuds latch comfortably into your ear, and regardless of how you move your head, they won't fall out. Not only that, but Raycon also offers a 32-hour battery life with 8 hours of playtime, so as soon as you charge them up, you're good to go for the rest of the day. Furthermore, Raycons offer a push-button feature on the side of both earbuds, so if you need to skip through the music or pause the music or even pick up a call, you can do that by simply tapping the earbuds and never taking your phone out of your pocket. And thanks to Raycon, if you go to the link in the description at buyraycon.com/Wendigoon, you will be able to get your Raycon earbuds for 15% off. That's right, just go to the link below at buyraycon.com/Wendigoon and you will be able to get this fantastic audio package at 15% off. What's not to love? Thank you all so much for watching the ad, and thank you so much to Raycon for sponsoring the video. It really does mean the most. I hope you all check them out. Link is in the description, and we are back to the video. We are going to go ahead and get into it, but as always, thank you for watching. The first thing to understand about the Five Nights at Freddy's series is that at its core, it's the story of two people. And those two people are William Afton and Henry Emily. Henry and William were business partners, and they went in as partners together on a new branch of children's entertainment. This new style of children's entertainment would be demonstrated on their first business venture together, a restaurant known as Fredbear's Family Diner. With later entries of the series, as many people have pointed out, you could think of the restaurants as a sort of Chuck E. Cheese establishment. The kind of places that would have singing animatronics, as well as arcade games and pizza parties for children of all ages.
Did you guys, like, fear the animatronics at Chuck E. Cheese? Personally, I don't think I went enough times to really get, like, scarred. I always saw, like, the dude walking around in the Chuck E. Cheese, like, costume. I don't remember if I saw the animatronics, though. I feel like I did. I feel like I would have had to. Or they were just always broken. I feel like either I saw them and they weren't scary, or they were just not being used because they were broken. Because I didn't go. So, like, I don't think I got that particular scarring. I see yes and no's, actually. Well, I'm so sorry for your trauma.
However, at least in the beginning, Fredbear's wasn't like that. It was a much smaller establishment that boasted 2 animatronics. The down-to-earth, homey nature of it is even present in the name of Fredbear's Family Diner. It certainly seems like a passion project, not only in the name and very nature of a children's entertainment business, but also in the attitudes of the 2 owners. From everything we see later in the series, it seems like Henry was the business and managerial side of the partnership, while William was more interested in the day-to-day operations, and specifically the construction of the animatronics.
I didn't know Henry's last name was Emily.
What made these animatronics unique, and the thing that set their business apart from other competitors, was the addition of something William dubbed as spring lock suits. The core idea behind a spring lock suit is that it is initially a normal animatronic. However, if someone were to twist the gear on the back of the costume, the animatronic parts would slip to the sides and allow a worker to step inside of the animatronic itself and use it as a costume. Whereas at other establishments, the children would see an animatronic on stage and then a worker would come out to serve them pizza in a kind of dollar store mascot version of the costume. At Fredbear's Family Diner, they could watch the animatronics get off stage themselves and come play with the kids. It seems like in the beginning that was part of the goal for William, to keep the magic alive in the mind of a child. And in the beginning, it seems that they had such humble beginnings that William and Henry were the people running the costumes themselves. Despite being owners, they would take the time to step into their own respective spring lock suits and go play and entertain the children.
That's actually really respectable, because I guess it's so early on, right? But to have owners very involved, and I never imagined that we were gonna pitch this, like the start of this entire thing, as being like kind of humble and a passion project. But before it all hits the fan and goes terribly wrong, that sounds actually really cool.
Henry would pilot the restaurant's namesake, the Fredbear suit itself, whereas William would slip into the secondary mascot of the business, a golden rabbit costume, which would later be known to the community as Spring Bonnie. Perhaps part of this dedication to the project came in the form of their own children. William having 3 children himself, Elizabeth, Michael, and Evan, and Henry having 1 daughter by the name of Charlie. I know that in the books it mentions Henry has a son as well. However, he's never mentioned anywhere in the games. So again, I'm just talking the games. He doesn't exist up here. Something that I want to mention really quick on this timeline is if an event is inside of a red box, that is a definite year that that event happened. There's not a lot of surefire times we get in the series. So the few that you see with the red box are times we know this happened on this date. The blue boxes are more so guesstimates. In other words, the thing I'm about to talk about says 1980, but it could have also been 81. 1981 or late 70s, or the year doesn't really matter, 1980 is just a guess. Looking at the timeline, we can see that William and Henry started Fredbear's Family Diner around 1970. And then, thanks in no small part to the dedication of the owners themselves, as well as the invention of spring lock suits, a decade later, they are able to expand their brand, as around 1980, William opens Afton Robotics, and William and Henry continue to expand the business itself with Fazbear Entertainment, which becomes a sort of industrial chain of Freddy Fazbear restaurants. Things were going great for the two. Henry was continuing to manage the brand as it was expanding, and William continued to create more odd and interesting robotic figures. One of these inventions that we see in the games is a small Fredbear plush that seems to have a camera inside of it, as well as a series of animatronics later dubbed Funtime animatronics that it seems William was building during this time. Everything was going great, and it seemed that nothing would stop the pair from accomplishing great things in the realm of children's entertainment. That was until the accident that happened in 1983. For whatever reason, it seems that Evan was particularly terrified of the animatronics his father was building. And no one's really certain why. People who have gathered information from the books have speculated that perhaps William was purposefully making his child afraid of the animatronics because William knew that they were dangerous. Because, you know, animatronic suits that have like wires and gears holding the animatronic pieces from flying back into place and impaling you, that's called foreshadowing, would be dangerous to go around, especially if William is building them in his house. From what we see in future games, it even seems that William had put cameras throughout his house so that while he was working on his animatronics, he could monitor exactly what his son was doing. In the meantime, Evan's older brother, Michael, began to torment Evan over his fear of these creatures. See, at this point, the brand had extended from not only Fredbear's Family Diner, but there was also Fredbear and Friends, and there were several other mascots that would stand on stage along with Fredbear. One of these was a character by the name of Foxy. So, Michael would wear a Foxy mask and begin tormenting his brother because he thought it was funny. William didn't seem to mind this, perhaps even encouraging it, as he saw it as another way to keep his son safe. The events of Five Nights at Freddy's 4, which again according to me is the earliest game in the timeline, followed the nightmares of young Evan Afton. The reason the animatronics look so over-the-top creepy and terrifying is because these aren't real animatronics. These are the nightmare imaginations of a young child who's afraid of his father's creations.
That's why everything turns into, well, not everything, but that's why the Foxy turns into like the plush and stuff, which, I mean, I understand like kids' brain does this to you, but I feel like my brain does this to me too. Not necessarily over like something like a stuffed animal or whatever, but I definitely have those like see something in the dark moments when I'm sleeping. So like if I wake up and it is like pitch black in my room and there's a particularly dark spot, I think it's a person. So I don't remember having too many moments like this as a kid, but I know that your mind like messes with you so bad. I hate it. I hate it really, really bad.
And Evan is spending these sleepless nights trying to evade these creatures of his own imagination. That is until the end of the week, whenever Afton and his family go to Fredbear's Family Diner. While there, Michael and his friends, all wearing the mascots' faces, begin to torment Evan and make him get closer and closer to the animatronics themselves. Until Michael makes a joke that Evan wants to give Fredbear a kiss, to which the boys put Evan into Fredbear's mouth, and whenever the animatronic bites down, Evan doesn't die yet, at least not immediately. His family rushes him to the hospital where he remains comatose for the next couple days. In the final levels of Five Nights at Freddy's 4, it's possible when looking back at the bedside to see things like a hospital IV bag or flower pot.
That's sick, by the way. I think when I watched this, I watched it through Markiplier playing it and stuff. I don't remember if he commented on it. It was either when I watched it through Mark or later when I watched it like through Jacksepticeye. But I remember it getting like pointed out because I missed it. Because like if you're just quickly turning around, you're probably paying attention more to like center of the screen. I think it had to be pointed out to me, but it was really cool to see.
Not only that, but the nightmares within the final nights of Five Nights at Freddy's 4 transition from the general different animatronics from the restaurant to just nightmarish apparitions of Fredbear himself. While Evan is lying in a hospital bed, we hear Michael tell Evan that he's sorry and ask for his forgiveness. Until the Fredbear plush itself begins to speak to Evan. As established earlier, this is one of William Afton's camera plushies, so it's safe to assume that this is William speaking to his son.
I never knew that. I never knew that this plushie, having like moving eyes and stuff, was meant to be anything more than kind of like not hallucination, but imagination kind of sort of thing. I didn't know that it was supposed to be something being controlled.
Final moments, we hear William say that it's going to be okay and that he's going to put Evan back together before everything fades out and Evan seemingly passes away. Now, if you're a big aficionado of the series, you may disagree with that placement in the story. However, this, as well as the events that happen directly afterwards, are so debated, and there's so many different options of when this happened or this happened before this or blah blah blah. But again, as a story, this makes the most sense to me as the catalyst that began everything. William, a man who wanted to entertain children and managed to do so for decades, began his mad descent when one of his children used one of William's own creations to kill his other child. And then in that father's desperation, he begins experiments and procedures to try to maintain the soul of a child. See, that's where the horror comes from. For those of you who may have not known anything else about the Five Nights at Freddy's games, you've probably heard it has to do with dead children possessing animatronics. And while the rules of it aren't explicitly laid clear, at least not in the video games themselves, it seems that if a child is killed by an animatronic or a piece of their body is put into that animatronic after death, that their soul possesses the animatronic itself.
Okay. Do not listen to me. I'm going to make a wild guess based off incredibly hazy memories and inaccurate information. I'm just going to say this before we get too far into the video, because if I don't say it and then I'll say it later, I was going to say that, you guys aren't going to listen. I thought, since the kid we just talked about is Evan, right? I thought that Evan became the puppeteer. I don't know if that's true and what is going to be explained, but since he's talking about, you know, the kids possessing the animatronics and stuff, my very vague, not correct memory is telling me that Evan became the puppeteer. I don't remember if that's real or not, because I don't think Evan became Freddy unless they did. But I thought that was the puppeteer. Marionette. Sorry. That.
You can essentially think of it as a haunt or a haunted house. If someone dies in a derelict mansion, then they haunt that derelict mansion. If someone dies and their body is put inside of an animatronic, then their spirit possesses that animatronic. Understood. And that is exactly what happens here. While we do not know the details of how or why or what happened, either because Fredbear killed Evan, or potentially afterwards, William put pieces or all of Evan's body into Fredbear, Evan's spirit possessed the Fredbear animatronic.
Okay, thank you. So I was incredibly wrong. That's on me. I don't know. Like, I guess it's been so long since I seen anything game related from FNAF, let alone, you know, 4, I think it was 4 for this one is what he said. Like, it's so much, it's such a big world that my wires are crossed. Absolutely. So that makes sense if you die by the animatronic, or like he's saying, if a part or whole body is like put into it. That's so bad. He came to like haunt the thing that killed him. That's terrible. That's awful. I don't like that.
See, now the color coding makes sense. This wasn't just to
No spoilers. Wait. So does Michael die and become Bonnie? I'm gonna shut up.
high school teachers
shut up.
to make the letters look cool. It had a purpose because now Evan is the spirit of Fredbear. I don't know if you can see Fredbear good. If I turn the lights off, the reflection isn't there. So yeah, Fredbear is Evan, at least for now. I'm not sure how, perhaps just being around Fredbear and seeing signs that his child was still inside of the suit, or maybe even some kind of weird science that William applied to the suit itself whenever he made it. Either way, it seems that William figured out his son Evan was inside of the Fredbear suit. As you could imagine, not only the death of William's child, but now his child being trapped in a suit of his own invention changed William's life forever. It seems that from here, William wanted to better understand what had happened to Evan. So he began to modify the aforementioned Funtime animatronics with the express purpose of trapping another child so that he could figure out how the whole soul possession works. His primary contender in this being an animatronic known as Circus Baby. Circus Baby was specifically designed with a giant claw inside of its chest cavity, as well as sensors that would always calculate and determine how many people were currently in the room. He did this with the intent of Circus Baby managing to get a child alone all by themselves so that its claw could then come out and grab the child before dragging it into its chest cavity to be killed.
And this happened to his daughter, huh? Because I know this from I think, aren't you in like the little vent thing underneath the desk in Sister Location? Everything's powered out and she's talking to you and she's talking about how she's like counting the kids and everything, and then one, and then she talks about like the screams and stuff. I'm pretty sure it's Afton's kid. It's another one. That's crazy.
She can dance. She can sing. She's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips. She can take song requests. She can even dispense ice cream.
With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton.
This is, at least according to my timeline, the beginning of William's evil and murderous intent. It seems that the death of his own child pushed William to such extreme lengths that he was now willing to kill another kid in order to either see what happened to his son or perhaps even find a way to bring him back.
It's so fucked, but in a very, very sick way, deserving that it's another one of his kids. Like, that is such a terrible thing to say, and I'm speaking only because it's fiction, but you designed this thing to do exactly what it does, and it ends up doing that thing to your kid instead of someone else's kid. Like, in fiction, that's pretty deserving, I'm gonna be honest with you, Chief.
During the construction of Circus Baby, William's daughter Elizabeth was in love with it, probably because it was an animatronic that looked like a young girl and had the ability to serve ice cream. On the opening day of a new Freddy Fazbear sister location known as Circus Baby's Pizza World, Elizabeth managed to get away from her father and go see Circus Baby all by herself. The Circus Baby animatronic, calculating that Elizabeth was the only one in the room, put out a piece of ice cream to serve her before grabbing her and bringing her into her chest, to which Elizabeth was killed.
Did you know that I was on stage
Yeah, this part.
once?
This part.
It wasn't for very long, only one day. I would always count the children. I'm not sure why. I was always acutely aware of how many there were in the room with me. There were 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. Something happened when there was 1. A little girl standing by herself. I was no longer myself, and I stopped singing. My stomach opened, and there was ice cream. I couldn't move, at least, not until she stepped closer. There was screaming for a moment, but only for a moment. I still hear her sometimes.
Hate that.
Why did that happen?
Hate that.
We're never shown exactly how William reacted to this, although I imagine this is never what he wanted. In Five Nights at Freddy's 5, also known as Sister Location, Elizabeth mentions many times that her father tried to keep her away, and she specifically went against his will in order to go see Circus Baby by herself. It seems that he didn't want Circus Baby to kill his daughter Elizabeth, however, that's exactly what happened. Despite this, however, his plan seemed to work, and the soul of Elizabeth began to possess the animatronic known as Circus Baby. Now, whenever Evan died, it was simply seen as an accident. While Michael and his friends caused the death of Evan, they were children as well, and it could be seen as a bullying incident gone wrong. However, when Elizabeth disappeared, that raised a lot more questions. We're told in the games that the sister location known as Circus Baby's Pizza World, again the place where Elizabeth was killed by Circus Baby, we are told that it was closed due to gas leaks. This obviously being a cover-up for this event here. However, there is no way this could have happened without Henry knowing. He was essentially the acting CEO over Fazbear's Entertainment, and there's no way that they would close down the brand new location on the first day due to gas leaks without him knowing any better. What I think happened, and this is supported by things that happened shortly after this, is that Henry found out what William was up to. Whenever William sees that Henry has created a robot whose sole purpose is to bring in children and then kill them, it probably raised a lot of red flags. We're never told this in-game, but perhaps at the same time, Henry also saw that William was trying to rebuild his son Evan, or put Evan back into the Fredbear costume, or whatever I will put you back together means. Either way, Henry was so disgusted, at least by what he saw with Circus Baby, that he kicked William out of the company. Potentially, Henry never alerted the authorities because, for one, him and William had been friends for at least 10 years, and two, William's actions has caused the death of his own daughter, so perhaps Henry saw that as punishment enough. Either way, Henry didn't alert the authorities, but he did kick William out of the business. There is a scene within a minigame in Five Nights at Freddy's 6, also known as Pizzeria Simulator. The minigame's called Midnight Motorist, and there is a part in it whenever you're playing as a little sprite that is believed to be William Afton. Again, everything in this entire series is entirely circumstantial. And while playing as William Afton, you walk up to a building called Junior's. Now, a place called Junior's is never mentioned anywhere else in the series.
It's Weenie Hut Jr.
However, general consensus is that Junior's is the first offshoot location of Fredbear's Family Diner, which is a place known as Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. So whenever William goes to the door of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the worker at the front door says, "You know you can't be here, don't make this any harder than it has to be." Which means the person at the front door, either Henry or an employee of Henry, recognizes William and says, "You can't be here, don't make this worse than it has to be." A lot of people say that minigame takes place during the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. However, I don't agree due to something I'll mention in a minute. In the rest of that Midnight Motorist minigame, it seems that William goes home, to which someone on the couch tells him, quote, "Leave him alone, he's had a rough day." Before William goes to someone's room, yells at them to let him in, before he walks outside and sees that whoever was in the room broke the window and went to, quote, "that place again." Now, this is all speculation because most of the stuff in this series is speculation. What are you going to do? It seems to me like this person sitting on the couch is probably William's wife, and although she's never seen in the series again, that's the only character that can make sense here. And the child that he is berating is his only surviving child, Michael. Michael is now terrified by his father and remorseful for the actions that he himself committed that led to the death of Evan. Perhaps whenever William says that Michael is going to that place again, he's referencing Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, because maybe Michael's trying to figure out what happened to his sister. Like I said, that was speculation, but it makes the most sense to me. The core takeaway from it is that William is now being kicked out of the locations that he helped create by his business partner, Henry. And while Henry was in his right to do so, I mean, he found William with a child scooping animatronic that he built. Like, you can't let that guy keep working around children. Henry becomes paranoid of the idea that William will try to retaliate. During this time, William makes a new animatronic.
Oh.
An animatronic known as the marionette, or just the puppet. This puppet is designed for the express purpose of protecting Henry's daughter Charlotte, also known as Charlie. One day, William, perhaps in the midst of a rage towards his business partner Henry, William decides that he is going to take from Henry what William had accidentally taken from himself. Again, as we can see from many games placed throughout the video game series, one day Charlie is locked outside, to which William Afton pulls up in his vehicle, kills the young child, before driving away and leaving her body in an alley. Now, normally, the marionette puppet would have stopped this from happening, as its entire purpose is to follow Charlie around and protect her. However, during this event, it seems that the puppet was trapped and unable to get to Charlie until it was too late. Eventually, the puppet works its way outside in order to find the young girl, to which whenever the puppet gets there, the deed has already been done. The puppet, unable to do anything else, lies down next to Charlie, to which it seems through whatever supernatural means is filled throughout this narrative, the spirit of Charlie possesses the puppet.
I had no idea about that. What? I don't think I've seen the part of the minigame where the puppet goes outside. I've seen that with like the kids inside and the kid outside and them being killed. I don't think I've ever seen the part with the puppet going outside. That's like new to me.
Perhaps William killed Charlie outside that day because it was just a moment of opportunity, or perhaps he did it away from the animatronics because at this point 2 of his own children had been killed in the proximity of an animatronic and their soul had been taken into it. And perhaps William killed Charlie outside in order to prevent her from possessing an animatronic. However, despite his efforts, as noted here, the spirit of Charlie now possesses the marionette puppet. I like the idea of Charlie being the first murder victim of William, not only because it matches the story more and it makes the first intentional kill more purposeful, but in the events that follow, the animatronics are only possessed because the puppet attaches that spirit to each animatronic. So in order for any of the victims to possess future animatronics, the puppet has to be dead first. Not only that, but a line that Henry says in Pizzeria Simulator heavily implies that his child was the first victim of William's killing spree.
Not until I undo what he has done and heal this wound. A wound first inflicted on me, but then one that I let bleed out to cause all of this.
Ooh.
So due to Charlie's death, the restaurant is shut down. A couple years later, it reopens as the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
Dude, there's so many deaths and shutdowns. Why do we just let them keep popping up with new ones? And I guess it's the cover stories, right? I don't know exactly when it's just flat out said, yeah, it's shut down because someone's dead. But like, how we gonna let them just keep coming back with new names, man?
I think it is shortly after the reopening of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza that the missing children's incident occurs. For those that don't know, there is a mention in the first Five Nights at Freddy's game, and at the time this was the only lore for the overall series that we ever got, in which a newspaper clipping says that 5 children went missing at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and that's the reason it got shut down. That Freddy Fazbear's Pizza that got shut down because 5 children went missing is the current pizza place that I'm talking about in the timeline. And I'll pull the timeline back up in a second to look at, but I want to add the final names to this board first. But in short, we have the original Fredbear's Family Diner, and then we have some restaurants like Circus Baby's Pizza World that open then get closed, and maybe some other projects that we're not told about in the series. But after Fredbear's, we get Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Charlie is killed outside of it, so it is shut down and now reopened. It is shortly after this reopening, I think the missing children's incident occurs, and here's why. Whenever you are playing as the security guard, a man by the name of Jeremy Fitzgerald in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, phone guy, or the guy who is giving you the instructional messages over the phone, says that you are at the new reopened Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
Hello and welcome to your new summer job at the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
Yay!
And over the course of that week, he says that an investigation is taking place.
Okay, so just to update you, there's been somewhat of an investigation going on. We may end up having to close for a few days. I don't know.
Now, we know that the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 2, that week that you're playing as the security guard, take place in 1987. Most people say that the missing children's incident happened before the old restaurant was ever shut down, or in other words, around the same time that Charlie was killed. However, that wouldn't make sense if it's a current ongoing investigation. Think about it. If the children disappeared in 1985 and all that time had passed, why would the investigation now just be starting in 1987? We know that the investigation is not over the bite of 87 because that happens at the end of the work week. Also, to make sure everyone's still in the loop, in the original Five Nights at Freddy's game, which takes place after the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 2, I know there's prequels and sequels all over the place, the phone guy in the first game mentions that the old location, the location from Five Nights at Freddy's 2, was shut down due to something known as the Bite of 87, in which an animatronic bit out someone's frontal lobe.
They used to be allowed to walk around during the day, too. But then there was the Bite of 87. Yeah. It's amazing that the human body can live without the frontal lobe, you know?
So a lot of people say, oh, well, the investigation that's happening over the course of Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is the Bite of 87. But like I said, that happens to Jeremy Fitzgerald, the security guard you play as in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, at the end of the work week. So what is the investigation happening over the course of the week itself? Well, on the fourth night in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, the phone guy says there is an investigation happening. On the fifth night, he says that the business is on lockdown. And then finally, on the sixth night, he says that you're not even supposed to be here. Someone used one of the yellow suits in the back, and now none of the animatronics are acting right.
Okay, so just to update you, there's been somewhat of an investigation going on. We may end up having to close.
Oh, I just got goosebumps, dude.
Hey, keep a close eye on things tonight, okay? From what I understand, the building is on lockdown. No one is allowed in or out, you know, especially concerning any previous employees. What on earth are you doing there? Didn't you get the memo? The place is closed down, at least for a while. Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. None of them were acting right.
We find out in later installments that what had happened during this time is William Afton donned his Spring Bonnie or Golden Bunny suit that he used to wear back at Fredbear's before luring children into the back room and killing them one by one. We don't know William's motives for doing this. Perhaps he was doing it to try to experiment on the same conditions that caused two of his children to possess animatronics, or perhaps it was just an evil bloodlust that set in after the now death of 3 children in his life, one of them directly murdered by him. Either way, 5 children were killed, and it seems that in order to cover his tracks, William stuffed their bodies inside of the animatronics in the building itself. I believe that this missing children's incident, or in other words, the murder of 5 children, occurred immediately before Five Nights at Freddy's 2. And that is the investigation phone guy's referring to which at the end of the week he says someone wore one of the yellow suits and now none of the animatronics are acting right. It's even mentioned at this Five Nights at Freddy's 2 that they trashed the old animatronics and got brand new ones in, known as the toy animatronics. And those old ones seem to be a perfect place to store the bodies of his victims. Remember earlier how I said the Midnight Motorist minigame is believed by most to occur during Five Nights at Freddy's 2? And the reason William isn't allowed back into the building is because he would have just murdered 5 children? Well, the reason I don't think that's the case is because if you go all the way back to the first game, and again, read the newspaper clipping about the missing children's incident, it says that the suspect who wore the costume has been identified and apprehended. Of course, he was never convicted because they couldn't find the bodies. I don't know why they never checked the reeking animatronics, but that's besides the point. So if Midnight Motorist takes place during the investigation of the children that William had murdered, which, keep in mind, during the course of Five Nights at Freddy's 2, all happened in the span of about a week. There is no way William would have got to the pizza restaurant and been turned away because he currently would have been in police custody. And also, I know this is being like super hypercritical of specific story moments, which doesn't always work, but I still think it's kind of weird. If William had just murdered 5 children, and this isn't like debatable if he murdered 5 children, this is he was identified and arrested and they just can't find the bodies to convict him. But it's known by everyone around that William killed those kids. I think him, when he's supposed to be in police custody, coming to the door of the restaurant and then the bouncer being like, hey, you shouldn't be around here. Doesn't that seem like a very like low power push off to a guy who just murdered 5 kids in your restaurant?
Yeah, I don't think it would have been such a calm reaction. I think you're calling the cops and freaking the f out, honestly.
That sounds much more like William was doing some shady stuff and accidentally killed his own daughter and got kicked out. Not he murdered 5 kids like last week. And again, he should be at police custody at this point. Midnight Motorist happens before the death of Charlie, not during Five Nights at Freddy's 2. You can fight me about it. We find out these names from a point later in the series, but the 5 children who were killed by William Afton during the incident were Gabriel, Fritz, Susie, Jeremy, and Cassidy. And those children were placed into the bodies and subsequently possessed Freddy, Foxy, Chica, Bonnie, and Fredbear, respectively. Now, it's not known if William put the bodies into the animatronics, or that's indicated in the puppet minigames throughout the series, that the puppet, now being possessed by Charlie, went through and attached each of those children to the animatronics themselves. Or more specifically, we know that the puppet was responsible for giving life to these kids. We don't know if that means some more spiritual or metaphorical action, or if the puppet took the murder victims and placed them inside of the animatronics. Either way, the bodies couldn't be found because the bodies of the children were inside of the animatronics themselves. Again, we don't know if the puppet or William did that. Like I said, according to my timeline, this happens immediately before the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. So the reason that the animatronics are trying to kill the security guard Jeremy Fitzgerald in that game is because 5 of them are possessed by the spirits of children murdered by William Afton. As we see in several of the flashback minigames, William Afton is depicted as a purple figure, also known as Purple Guy, wearing a security badge. So it's more than likely that William gained access to the restaurant and was able to kill these kids and don the Spring Bonnie suit because he pretended to be a security guard and wore the purple security guard vest. This would explain why 5 children who have recently been killed try to kill the first person they see wearing a purple security uniform. The phone guy phone calls that I've mentioned are pretty much the only way that the character gets any world or lore relevance for the first couple games. At the end of the Night 6 phone call, Phone Guy tells Jeremy, again the security guard that you're playing as, that he has one job left to do before the restaurant closes down for a while. That job is he has to watch over a children's birthday party the next day and make sure he wears his purple security uniform and stand very close to the animatronics.
We have one more event scheduled for tomorrow, a birthday. You'll be on day shift. Wear your uniform, stay close to the animatronics, and make sure they don't hurt anyone.
This causes the event on the final day of the restaurant's opening, known as the Bite of 87, in which one of the animatronics bites Jeremy Fitzgerald, ripping out his frontal lobe. This, as you can imagine, was very bad PR for the company, and Freddy Fazbear's Pizza shut down at the time for good.
Yeah, it's not a good look in the public, you know. We're just gonna take a break. Everyone's gonna take a holiday for a little bit, you know. We're not gonna let it permanently smudge our name or anything. We'll be back you know, people just keep dropping like flies, you know, but we'll return, don't you worry. We gotta continue entertaining children. Duh.
And then on the 7th night, the final night that the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is opened, a new security guard comes in to work only one night by the name of Fritz Smith. Fritz is never mentioned anywhere else in the timeline, although it's weird that in a restaurant where people are actively dying due to the animatronics, some random guy would come in to work one night. For reasons I'm going to explain later, I believe Fritz Smith is an alias for Michael Afton, who is now out and trying to find answers to his father's wrongdoings. The last thing I want to mention before I put the timeline back up is that if you'll notice here, Cassidy is said to possess Fredbear. But if you'll also look up here, Evan is also possessing Fredbear. All the animatronics in the series that have been possessed can move around on their own free will except for Fredbear. The primary belief for this is, if you'll remember, the Fredbear costume is both a costume and an animatronic. So if you were to have it set on costume mode and just laying in a corner and someone's to possess that, they can't move and are essentially stuck inside of a decrepit mascot uniform. Whereas all these other ones who are possessed are functioning animatronics and are able to move about on their own free will. In the Five Nights at Freddy's survival logbook, yes, that's a real phrase I just said out loud. Without going into all the specifics, it seems that there is a conversation taking place between two hidden authors on the pages themselves. For example, there will be faded text asking, "Do you remember your name?" and then responses written in the text elsewhere in the book. It's two people having a conversation with each other, and without going into the nitty-gritty of how this was determined, because again, it was a lot. By the way, I didn't mention this enough earlier. Big shout out to Game Theory, also known as MatPat. Like, I understand he has also done the thing I mentioned where people get hyper-focused on the details and forget the story, but none of this would be possible without the amount of work and research that guy and his community has done to figure out all of this information, to the point where a lot of the flippant facts that I'm giving you wouldn't be known if it wasn't for his videos. So gotta respect your forerunners that came before you. So again, thank you, MatPat.
No, we love a hyperfixation, dude. Huge applause. Absolutely.
But due to work mostly done by him, it is determined that there are two souls possessing the Fredbear animatronic. These two souls being Cassidy and Evan, as mentioned earlier. And also they can't move. They're just stuck in a suit talking to each other. So that's, pretty sad. All right, so just to recap everyone to make sure we're on the same page. 1970, William and Henry start Fredbear's Family Diner. In the 80s, the business expands into several restaurants and more of a corporate entity. In 1983 is when the events of FNAF 4 happened, where Michael kills Evan using the mouth of the Fredbear animatronic, and all of the nightmares that Evan have take place during that time. Because of this, William builds the Circus Baby animatronic with the intention to kill and kidnap a child.
Yeah, kills his
And
daughter.
I say both in 1983, they were probably in the same year, maybe 1984, whatever. So in 1983, Circus Baby kills Elizabeth. And shortly after that, the events of Midnight Motorist take place, where Henry kicks William out of the business. This causes William to get angry and Henry to get paranoid, so Henry builds the puppet to protect Charlie, or Charlotte as I have said here, to which William then kills Charlie, and the puppet is possessed by the spirit of Charlie. Because of that, Fredbear and Friends shuts down, and it's later reopened probably around 1985, sometime between 85 and 87, and it's reopened and rebranded as Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. New animatronics are brought in to take the place of the old ones. This is around the same time that the missing children's incident occurs, right before Five Nights at Freddy's 2. So the bodies of the children from the missing children incident, either by William or the puppet, are stuffed into the old animatronics, which leads directly into the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. At the end of that week, the Bite of 87 occurs, which is when, during the day shift, one of the animatronics bites Jeremy Fitzgerald's frontal lobe out, technically not killing him, because it's mentioned in Five Nights at Freddy's 1 that someone can live without a frontal lobe. but that doesn't mean he lived well or for very long afterwards. I have spring lock failures mentioned here. That doesn't mean directly in 1987. Whenever we get to Five Nights at Freddy's 3, there's a mention on one of the recorded tapes that one of the restaurants was shut down for having several spring lock failures.
After learning of an unfortunate incident at the sister location involving multiple and simultaneous spring lock failures, the company has deemed the system temporarily unfit for employees.
Temporarily unfit. That seems to be a very common theme through this entire thing. How something so horrid can happen and they just temporarily take a break. Like, I know that this is a story, but I'm gonna harp on it again, man. Who is letting this company continue to open these things for children when children go missing, when people get injured? And like, I understand that some of it is kept hush hush, but like, it's hard because it's not real. It's not real. I know it's not real, but that's the only thing I have to go off of, right? Like, if this happened, at most, you might have it happen and you can rebrand once. And even then, it's kind of iffy, right? Like, that's something I can't get over. How everything is just like a temporary setback. Everything is, oh, well, this fucking horrific tragedy happened. We're just gonna shut down. We'll be back. Your sister location, rebrand. Not really. We just changed the name like a little bit. New animatronics. Hey, the old ones killed people. We got new ones. You gonna show up? Yeah, you are. That's right. Like, oh my god. I know it's a story. But oh my god, how do you just let it keep happening? That's kind of crazy to me. Sorry. Rant over. I'm sorry.
And then finally, on the final night that the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is opened, Michael comes to work as the night guard on night 7 under the alias of Fritz Smith before he is fired when the place is shut down. You good? Did that all make sense? We good?
Best I can.
Good, because now I'm on to the first game.
Let's
no,
go.
I'm not kidding. We're now ready to talk about the original Five Nights at Freddy's. Do you see why this is so confusing? People give creators like MatPat and stuff a hard time for this. But like, if you were in it whenever this was happening, you had to just totally guess about everything I just said, because we got rough hints and newspaper clippings as to what happened.
Yeah, that's what I said in like earlier, being like, everyone made kind of like ludicrous theories because it was so all over the place. And until you got any like bit of information to either confirm or deny that you're right, you just kind of said something. You were just throwing like spaghetti at the wall. And something like this, even with everything laid out, there's so much. It's so confusing. And people still disagree. Like he's talking about, they disagree about timeline. They disagree like if this actually means this and different things like that. So when it was happening, when it was new, when everything was coming out and it was a game by game story building, essentially, like, oh my god, it was nice to be a part of. I didn't deep dive into it, but like watching the games be played and trying to like keep up, you just said the most ludicrous thing, because chances are you might be right is how I felt that it was going, because there was just so much open to interpretation. And even though it still kind of is like that, you do have like some kind of concrete blocks here or there, but I kind of don't hate that it's open for interpretation to a degree, or not even to a degree, like to a vast degree, I feel, but that's a personal opinion. It's a lot. It's ludicrous. It doesn't make sense, but I think that's part of the silly fun of it and how just all over the place and ludicrous that it is. I'll be honest with you.
Like, yeah, a lot of the theories got kind of ridiculous and out there, but man, there was so much we were filling in the gaps for. So now we are finally to the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 1 occurring in 1993. In it, a security guard by the name of Mike Schmidt gets a night job at the reopened Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. So last time, I'll go through the restaurants, at least for now. We had Fredbear's Family Diner, which is the one where Evan got his head chopped and then that shut down. We had Fredbear and Friends, which is the one where Charlie was murdered outside of, and that got shut down. We then had Freddy Fazbear's Pizza open, which is where 5 children were murdered, and 1 security guard had the front part of his brain taken out, and that was shut down. And now finally, we have Freddy Fazbear's Pizza reopening, and Michael working as the security guard. The reason I'm so confident in saying that Michael is Mike Schmidt is because, for one, Mike's name is Mike. And also, in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 and Five Nights at Freddy's 1, whenever Fritz and Mike are fired, on the pink fire slip, it says that they were fired due to odor. While this probably started out as just a joke in the first one, I think it is enough of a clue in to tell us that this is the same person. And also, it makes the most sense for a storyline. Because if these guys aren't Michael, then in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, some random guy showed up for one night to fight for his life against animatronics and then never showed up again. And then in Five Nights at Freddy's 1, you have a guy who is almost being murdered by animatronics
and he's still
every
showing
night
up.
he's working there, but then comes back to work the next day. It only makes sense to me if this is Michael who is braving these horrors in order to try to right his father's wrongs, or at least figure out what happened to his father. It's like Chekhov's gun. It would be completely pointless to introduce 2 characters who never show up again and have no other plot relevance when you can have one character fill both of those roles and make the story more meaningful. Anyway, it's mentioned by Phone Guy in the original Five Nights at Freddy's that they took the animatronics from the FNAF 2 location, the old decrepit ones, and gave them a remodel, and those are now the animatronics they're using on stage. So, in other words, the animatronics that are possessed by the dead children just got a remodel, and now they're back on stage again. And once again, the reason they are trying to kill you, the player, which is also you, Michael Afton, is because you're dressed in the security uniform of the man that killed them. And probably, since it's Michael, also looks a little bit like him too. I also didn't mention this earlier. There's a lot of people who say William's real tally is like 10 children that he murdered. However, that doesn't show up anywhere in the story. And the main reason they say that is so all of the animatronics that try to attack you in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, the toy animatronics and the old ones, are all possessed, so that would make sense. However, it's mentioned by the Phone Guy in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 that the toy animatronics have a facial recognition system that is connected to a criminal database so that they will be able to alert anyone or know if there's any predators among the children.
I
At least
forgot
that's what
about
Phone Guy
that.
says, who's to say they can't also attack people linked to that database. And since the puppet was there at Five Nights at Freddy's 2, remember the one that started all of this, and we know that the puppet can manipulate animatronics, at the very least Charlie put the bodies of the children into the old animatronics so that they'd be possessed. What's to say the puppet didn't change the facial recognition so that they would just kill anyone in a security guard uniform? Again, that would also explain the bite of 87. And, like, especially when you see where the story goes from here, and very specifically where the story ends, it doesn't make any sense if there's, like, another 5 children whose souls are just out there somewhere. It makes a lot more sense if the only children Michael killed were Charlie, and then the 5 children at the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 location. Also, everyone wants to say in, like, all the theories I looked at, that William killed a bunch of kids down here, I guess because he was in like a silly, goofy mood. Because everyone tries their hardest, and I'm not talking about anyone specifically, this is just like the general air from the community. Everyone tries so hard to make this story as one-dimensional as possible and just say, William, bad, he killed kids here, he killed kids again, and that's it. And while, yes, William bad, it is William reason for bad that I think is interesting, and the reason that this story's always intrigued me.
I really like that he's breaking it down and using the simple speak. It very help me thank very much. Big thank. Everyone, thank. Thank.
His son was killed by his other son using an invention of his own making. And then he lost his mind trying to figure out how his son's soul could be preserved that led to the death of his daughter and then everything afterwards. The story becomes much more interesting when you view this as humans with motives rather than just insert generic bad guy, kill child,
crazy
on
just
to
do
scene
thing.
2. Anyway, so the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 1 takes place,
Instead of
in which
become
you can
crazy
see
do
the
thing.
4 animatronics, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Freddy coming to kill you, as well as apparitions of Fredbear, known to most of the community as Golden Freddy. Whenever you take into account that Evan could be the spirit inside of Fredbear, it becomes much more impactful whenever Fredbear says, "It's me," to Michael Afton, because that is Michael's younger brother who he killed, pointing out to him, "It's me," over and over again.
Oh, that gave me chills. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, that's very concerning. I in particular do not enjoy that.
Before killing him in his office, at least, if you lose the game. But during this entire time, William is released by the police. Again, they have the camera footage of him being the last one seen with the children, but they can't find the bodies and can't pin anything on him. So shortly after the events of the first Five Nights at Freddy's, William goes to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in order to cover up his evidence. This is the flashback games that we see in Five Nights at Freddy's 3, where William goes into the restaurant and begins disassembling the animatronics. Now we find out later in Sister Location that he took pieces of those animatronics and then rebuilt them into the framework of the Funtime animatronics. If you'll remember, Circus Baby was one of those, which was this private collection he had made. And now he is disassembling the animatronics that are possessed by the spirits of the children he killed and reassembling them into these animatronics of his own creation. We know that this has to take place after Five Nights at Freddy's 1 because in those flashbacks he completely destroys the original 4 animatronics. And before the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 5, also known as Sister Location. Because in Sister Location, all of the old animatronics have been reassembled by William into these new Funtime animatronics. And based on how these flashbacks end, there's no way he could have done that after the flashbacks. It had to be during. Because at the end of this minigame, we see the souls come out of the animatronics that William had been disassembling and attack William himself. Within the ruins of the derelict Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, William becomes frightened and decides to hide inside of the Spring Bonnie suit. However, if you'll remember, these suits are designed so that the animatronic components can be twisted to the sides in order to make room for someone to step into the costume. However, there is a mention in the series that if these suits get old or wet, there is a chance of a spring lock failure. Or in other words, the animatronic components shooting back into place while someone is still wearing it. So as William puts on the old suit in order to shield himself from the children.
Here we go. You ready? Yeah, laugh while you can. Yes! Frig you! Frig you!
He is killed by a spring lock failure. Yay! And as the spirits of the children he murdered slip away, William bleeds to death in the now abandoned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. I don't want to take the timeline back down, and I don't even know how much of this you can see whenever I hang it up. But as you can see here, I have William listed on the bottom as Springtrap. Springtrap is the name that people give Spring Bonnie after William possesses the suit, because the rules still apply. If you die inside of a suit or your body's inside of it, you are now the possessed soul who is controlling that suit. So William now exists as one of these derelict souls controlling Spring Bonnie, again known as Springtrap. In events we see later in the game, someone in control at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza decides to wall up all of the old rooms in the old business locations.
Just to inform all employees that due to budget restrictions, the previously mentioned safe rooms are being sealed in most locations, including this one. More crews will be here most of the day today, constructing a false wall over the old store base.
That someone most definitely has to be Henry. So
Okay.
around 1995, William is entombed in the back room of an abandoned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, now possessing the suit known as Springtrap. It is at this point that sister location, or Five Nights at Freddy's 5, takes place. The reason it has to happen here is because William dies, or at least stops living, and starts possessing a suit that has his decomposing corpse in it at the end of these Five Nights at Freddy's 3 minigames.
Also, it's really cool how it was the menu would show you on startup that William was in the suit. You'd see like the really kind of like decomposed like face and stuff, and like the mouth, and it was so gross, but it's so cool. It's so bleh.
So he couldn't have put the spirits of the dead children or components of their suits into the Funtime animatronics after that happened. And because we see him taking apart the animatronics in those minigames, I'm going to say that he disassembled them and then reassembled them into the Funtime animatronics at the same time. So shortly after William dies and gets walled up into a back room in a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, Michael decides to go figure out more about what his father was doing. It's there that Michael goes to an underground storage facility that is specifically made for the Fazbear Entertainment rental animatronics. The animatronics that are found down there are the Funtime animatronics themselves, including Circus Baby, which at the time is being possessed by Michael's younger sister, Elizabeth. This is where we get a lot of the information that indicates how Elizabeth died, how the Funtime animatronics were made, and stuff I've already mentioned. So, to very briefly describe the events that happened in Sister Location, the Funtime animatronics are essentially trapped in this underground storage facility and want a way out. So in order to do that, Circus Baby tricks Michael into helping them escape. The way Circus Baby ends up doing this is by bringing Michael to something known as a scooping room, which is where a giant machine is located that pulls out the endoskeleton of animatronics and leaves just the skin present. And this is like, I know we're talking about a series that has to do with children possessing animatronics and then like devices made to like scoop children into them and all that. But this is the most outlandish detail of the story to me, because I can accept all the possessed, haunting child stuff. It's the biology, anatomy, survival rates that I have a problem with. So it seems that the scooping machine scoops Michael, or at least rips a chunk of him out, and then pieces from all of the Funtime animatronics join together in a creature known as Innard. Innard is, like I said, all of the Funtime animatronics together in one collective mass, and Innard enters in to Michael somehow. I guess they say that the scooper like ripped out part of his gut, and then Innard crawled into his gut. I don't know. And then Innard, effectively wearing Michael as a skin suit, wears Michael around until his body can't take it, and then Innard leaves. Now, I know there's explanations in the books that have to do with, oh, well, there's this substance that can keep a spirit alive, and it's called remnant, and there's all this weird voodoo stuff. They tried to make possession and all that into a science, like something tangible, and I think that's pretty lame, and it's also not in the video game, so I choose to ignore it. But the short version is all the animatronics combine into Innard. A chunk of Michael is ripped out. Innard goes inside of that until Michael's body can't take it anymore, and Innard leaves, but Michael still survives. So effectively, all of the animatronics are now free and roaming around to do whatever they want to do. This is mentioned in the later games, but shortly after Innard escaped from Michael, because remember, Innard's now a collective consciousness of all of the Funtime animatronics, they kicked out Elizabeth, which is Circus Baby at the time, for some reason. I don't believe it's ever particularly
Maybe they
said. Someone
knew?
can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I think it may be because Elizabeth is the daughter of William Afton, the one that killed all of them, so they're not particularly fond of that. Either way, Elizabeth, aka Circus Baby, reassembles her original form out of scrap metal and becomes a kind of junk version of herself known as Scrap Baby. Ennard, which again is the collective consciousness of all of the children murdered by William, except for the puppet Charlie, we'll get to her in a minute, decides that the best way to continue survival is to scavenge parts and try to appear as a normal animatronic, or at least a sustainable one. So they do, and Ennard converts itself into a creature known as Molten Freddy. And then if you'll look at the timeline, there is a 30-year gap in time. Like, the events of Sister Location probably happened somewhere around 1995, and then nothing happens until 2023.
They just took another break. You know? We've had breaks. Maybe they just took a longer vacation this time. They could have let it be indefinite, but they just took a longer vacation.
I don't know of any stories in the series that say they killed anyone during this time period.
Okay.
But having like a collective conscious of murdered children roaming around the sewers is probably a bad thing. And it becomes an especially bad thing whenever in 2023, when the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 3 happens. See, by the year 2023, everything that happened on this side had become a local folk legend. It became a big story of, oh, here's the abandoned pizza place where all those children were murdered. So they took an abandoned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and remade it into a spooky horror attraction known as Fazbear Frights.
That is some dumb shit that people would actually do as well. Like, I could see that being a pop-up thing, like a scary house during Halloween or whatever. Like, that's just so tacky.
Where at the attraction, they get a bunch of old Fazbear Entertainment merchandise and hang it up everywhere in order to give the whole creepy abandoned pizzeria vibe. This is all well and good until the phone guy says that they recovered a full animatronic that was locked up in one of the walled-off back rooms.
But I have an even better surprise for you.
Nope.
You're not gonna believe this. We found one. A real one.
Oh,
And
no.
sure enough, that animatronic they found was William Afton, still alive and possessing the animatronic that is carrying his own corpse that for the past 30 years has been stuck in a walled-off room. So the people at Fazbear Frights think this is a great find and decide to set it up as part of the attraction, and that's where bad things happen. Michael gets the security position at Fazbear Frights, again trying to figure out what's going on. Keep in mind 30 years have passed too, so at this point he's a fully grown man who's determined to figure out what his dad did.
Father, it's me, Michael. I should be dead, but I'm not. I've been living in shadows. There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you. I'm going to come find you.
I don't like that. I don't like
Throughout
that.
the course of Five Nights at Freddy's 3, we get the full story of what happened to William Afton and how he came to possess the Springtrap animatronic, yada yada. Until on the final night of this Fazbear Frights location, it seems that Michael tries to burn down the building with his father in it. However, it doesn't work, and William manages to get free after 30 years of being locked up. So now by the year 2023, we have William, who is running around as the animatronic Springtrap. We have Molten Freddy, which is the collective conscious of all of the children William killed, again, except for Charlie. We have Charlie as the puppet, also running around doing God knows what. And we have Circus Baby, who was kicked out of Molten Freddy and is now existing as her own animatronic. So this is probably bad, having all of them run around doing their own thing, especially now that William's free to do whatever he wants. And it seems that Henry, who at this point has been quiet for a pretty good while in the story, has decided that he's going to do something about it. So Henry opens up a brand new restaurant, Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, opening a restaurant under a title that up until this point, as seen by Fazbear Frights, has some pretty bad blood attached to it. However, Henry doesn't care, and it seems he's just starting another pizza restaurant, to which Michael is immediately hired as security guard. As soon as the restaurant is opened, old animatronics start to show up in the back alley of the restaurant.
There is another aspect to your end-of-day routine. And that is inspecting and salvaging any animatronics found in the alley outside the back door. Things are found here quite often. And while we aren't sure why, what we do know is that they can be used for parts, which can mean a much-needed revenue boost before starting your next day.
Yay! Money! We don't know where these things came from. We don't know what's happening, but yay! Money!
These animatronics include Circus Baby, Molten Freddy, and Springtrap, who at the time to all the other workers just seemed to be old decrepit animatronics that it seemed somebody threw out or left behind the restaurant in case the restaurant wanted them. As the player, you have the choice in this game, which we're now to Five Nights at Freddy's 6, by the way, of what animatronics you want to bring into the restaurant and put in storage, and which ones you want to throw back outside. While you may have the ability to do what you want, in order to get the correct or full ending of the story, you have to bring all of the animatronics into the building. The game also heavily suggests to you that the purpose of what you're doing is to salvage all the animatronics.
I don't know how those tiny breaths of life came to inhabit those machines, but they will never find rest now, not like this. I have to call them all back, all of them, together in one place.
It seems that the animatronics are interested in whatever it is Henry's doing and have each made their way to the pizzeria one by one. Henry created the pizzeria as essentially bait in order to lure all of them back in. That is, except for one animatronic that Henry knew would not be interested in falling into a trap, and that is the puppet, which is possessed by his own daughter Charlie. To take care of her, Henry built an animatronic known as Lefty, an animatronic built with the sole purpose of catching the puppet animatronic.
What?
Again, if you didn't know about all this story or everything happening before, that's like a really weird detail in the later games. But again, here it makes sense because he's trying to get all the animatronics under one roof, and he knew that the puppet would probably be resistant to it, so he made an animatronic specifically to catch her. And then on the final night of the pizzeria, as Michael is being attacked by the animatronics, Circus Baby begins to tell Michael of how she's going to kill him.
You played right into our hands. Did you really think that this job just fell out of the sky for you? No. This was a gift for us. You gathered them all together in one place, just like he asked you to. All of those little souls in one place, just for us. A gift. Now we can do what we were created to do and be complete.
I don't like that.
I will make you proud, Daddy.
Ugh.
Watch,
Ugh.
listen, and be full.
Before she is cut off by Henry, now making his presence known. And you know what? Rather than describing what happens next, I'll just let you hear for yourselves.
Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth, if you still even remember that name, but I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not here to receive a gift, nor have you been called here by the individual you assume, although you have indeed been called. You have all been called here, into a labyrinth of sounds and smells, misdirection and misfortune. A labyrinth with no exit, a maze with no prize. You don't even realize that you are trapped. Your lust for blood has driven you in endless circles, chasing the cries of children in some unseen chamber, always seeming so near, yet somehow out of reach. But you will never find them. None of you will. This is where your story ends. And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. I am remaining as well. I am nearby. This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still, and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend.
Amen.
My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well. It's in your nature to protect the innocent. I'm sorry that on that day, the day you were shut out and left to die, no one was there to lift you up into their arms the way you lifted others into yours. And then, what became of you? I should have known you wouldn't be content to disappear. Not my daughter. I couldn't save you then, so let me save you now. It's time to rest, for you and for those you have carried in your arms. This ends, for all of us, in communication.
Damn.
And with that, we have the end of the Five Nights at Freddy's series.
Yay.
Almost. See, there's one extra game in the series, known as Ultimate Custom Night, and from any outsider looking in, it looks like just a bonus mode. It's just one night, and you can choose any of the animatronics from the series, set them to whatever difficulty you want, and then based on how hard of a difficulty you complete each of the challenges, you're given these kind of goofy cutscenes. It seems just like a fun free play mode, right? Well, every now and then, whenever you're killed by one of the animatronics in Ultimate Custom Night, they give you a kind of threatening message that seems directed to you, the person.
You won't die, but you'll wish you could.
I recognize you, but I'm not afraid of you. Not anymore.
It seems like there's more going on here. There's a character in the name known as Old Man Consequences. And if you change
Is this Afton's hell?
the settings to where it's just Old Man Consequences that you're going up against, you'll be taken to a sort of pristine lake where you're controlling a sprite that looks like Fredbear, to which Old Man Consequences tells Fredbear, leave the demons to the demons and rest your own soul. It seems like this Ultimate Custom Night is William Afton's personal hell. And not only that, but it is being curated by the spirit within Fredbear. If you'll remember, Evan and Cassidy are both within Fredbear itself. And whenever William dismantled all of the animatronics in order to put them into the Funtime animatronics, which eventually became Molten Freddy, it was left very ambiguous if Golden Freddy was among those who were captured. So if it's true that Golden Freddy was not brought into the fold of Ennard, that would mean that after Henry burnt the pizzeria and made all of them pass to the other side, that Golden Freddy was exempt from that. Or if Golden Freddy was a part of Ennard and was burned up in the pizzeria, then it seems like both of the souls in Golden Freddy or one of the souls in Golden Freddy doesn't want to let go. Now, there's a lot of evidence to say that this spirit that is torturing Michael is the spirit of Cassidy, the other one possessing Fredbear along with Evan.
Really?
The reason for that is some of the animatronic voice lines in Ultimate Custom Night refer to the one you should not have killed. And that couldn't be Evan because William didn't necessarily kill Evan, Michael killed Evan. However, I really want it to be Evan who's torturing William for eternity. Because not only would that be very poetic, as Evan was the first child dead that started everything, and now he's the last child who's still holding on to torturing his own father, but it also makes the story so much more personal that Evan, who was forced to live in this hell over and over again, because as his father said, he put him back together, is now forcing his father to endure what Evan and so many others had to endure as well. Either way, the spirit within Fredbear is still holding on and forcing William to endure their own torment rather than passing on to the other side. And if you manage to complete Ultimate Custom Night on nearly the hardest difficulty, you get a final end screen of Fredbear just sitting there, twitching as the camera fades out. Is this a representation that Fredbear is going to continue to fight and torture William for time infinite, or is the fading away symbolic of Fredbear finally letting go? Who's to say? But what I will say is that completes the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline.
Yay!
Probably, maybe. A lot of this was guesswork and speculation, but that's pretty much on par for the series. So my plan was to have this video as it is, and then immediately just keep talking and run into the VHS tapes. My plan was also to make this Five Nights at Freddy's lore section like 20-30 minutes, And this is not that. So while I normally would just say, oh, I don't care about making a 4 or 5 hour long video, I think it would be a discredit to the creators of the VHS tapes like Squimpus, McGrimpus, and whatnot if I put the VHS tapes now after, what's this going to be, like an hour and a half, 2 hours of video, and then start talking about their content, because their content's really cool and I want to give it the attention it deserves. Not, okay, go watch me talk for an hour and a half and then I'll talk about those guys. And also, a lot of people wanted to see the FNAF timeline or my take on it anyway, so this wasn't like lost time at all. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just upload this video as it is, just like the Five Nights at Freddy's story. And then right after I get done recording this, because I already have all the notes and stuff put together for the VHS tapes, I'm just going to record the VHS tapes and edit the two back to back. So this video will come out and then the VHS tape analysis will come out shortly after. That way the VHS guys get their due respect on the work they put into their projects rather than being at the end of however long this is going to cut down to. And if someone's just interested in the Five Nights at Freddy's story, they can watch this and be done with it. And if they want to know about the VHS tapes, which if you're interested in this story, I know you definitely will be, they can just go to the next video as soon as it's up. Which
Frick. Guys, do we have to watch the VHS tapes? Do we have to do that? Do I have to schedule that in? Yes. I do still have popcorn. I'll think about it.
I will link at the top of the description right below the ad. I think that's the safest way to do it. I also think that's the sanest way to do it to keep me from losing my mind.
Fair.
Because I've now been recording for about 4 hours, and doing another 2 standing up like this will break my legs. So I think I'll call myself a break. Either way, that was the complete story of the Five Nights at Freddy's series.
Yay!
I intended this to be like a working retrospective for both people who like the series as well as newcomers, and I don't know if anything I said made sense to newcomers.
It did. It helped.
I
for
normally
sure.
don't say like, oh, let me know in the comments if you blah blah blah, but unironically, if you aren't familiar with Five Nights at Freddy's, let me know if this made any sense, because I don't feel like it did. And I need to course correct myself.
That's the source material.
But I think it was like okay, at least as someone who knows the series. But thinking about it now, if you didn't know the series, I bet that was rough. Either way, if you are familiar with the series, and especially if you're not familiar with the series, and you just sat through all of that, I just want to say thank you for watching.
Thank you so much for your video.
Five Nights at Freddy's has always been very interesting to me, because it's such an interesting concept as someone who likes horror. It's like, all right, children were murdered inside of a pizza place and their bodies were shoved into animatronics, and then that's it, survive that scenario.
It was so like I want to say like out of the blue, and it was so unique because it started so many like spin-off games, fan games, like was mentioned and everything. And I remember the first game, how the horror was sitting there waiting for like it to come kill you was also like really interesting. I never personally played like the games, but just watching it was something for sure.
And like that's what it started out as. Everyone remembers how big the original game got. But then as more came out, like definitely the hype grew at least up until Five Nights at Freddy's 3. But as more came out, there were more questions being raised than there were answers given.
Yeah.
And like this is a weird tangent to go on, especially at the end of a Five Nights at Freddy's video. But take a series like Attack on Titan, where there was one core question that was being asked, but in the meantime, they were answering smaller questions that led your way up until you got your big reveal. And I think the biggest mistake of the Five Nights at Freddy's series is that they just kept asking questions and kind of sort of gave answers. The best example of that is, if you'll remember, ever since Five Nights at Freddy's 1, we were asking ourselves, oh, what's the bite of 87? Also, let me clarify, I've been in the community or like speculating about this stuff for years now. So when I say we, I mean we. So in the first game, we were all wondering, what does the bite of 87 mean? Because we just hear mention of it, and it's really along with the newspapers, our only world-building thing that was known in the first game. So we were asking ourselves that for a while, like, what's the Bite of 87? What's that? And then when Five Nights at Freddy's 4 comes around, we know that the Bite of 87 is someone losing their frontal lobe. And then in Five Nights at Freddy's 4, we see a mini game where a kid is placed into an animatronic and the animatronic bites down and crunches his head. So we're like, oh, that's the Bite of 87, which is where the meme from Markiplier comes in, because he thought the same thing we were all thinking. Like, oh, well, we're looking for someone getting their frontal lobe bit by an animatronic. Here's someone getting their frontal lobe bit by an animatronic. And it turns out the answer was no. That was the Bite of 83. That was a different bite that you didn't know about yet until now. The Bite of 87, we're never going to show it in the entire series. Like, I think, like, as someone who was hopefully interested and, like, invested and willing to dedicate time to figuring out what the story was, I did feel a little led on by a lot of details like that. And, like, if you're not familiar with the series, you haven't been keeping up with it, this story sounds kind of cool. Like, you know, William kills children, then he's forced to be in a creation of his own doing, and then he becomes like this monster, and then that monologue at the end's so cool, where Henry says, "Don't keep the devil waiting, old friend." It speaks for itself. It's so good. Like, when you look at that, it's very satisfying and fulfilling. But when you started here, and then did this, and they didn't really answer it, like I said, I felt a little led on. Though I'm conflicted about the series. Also, because someone's going to ask about this in the comments, what about Five Nights at Freddy's 8 and 9, also known as VR, or what also known as Help Wanted and Security Breach? To which I would reply, what about them? Those aren't games. Those are games that cut off this whole part of the timeline where it said that, oh, well, Henry's plan didn't work and William still lives so that we can have him in our stupid sequel that doesn't have a story or characters or relevance or working mechanics or anything to justify its existence other than a profit incentive. That's a little too cruel. I'm sure someone who worked on that game cared about what they were doing. But I can assure you that the people who came up with the idea of it did not. Because I hate Security Breach so much. If you like it, good for you. It makes me violent.
I think it might just be good, just completely separate. Like, I don't think Security Breach is a reboot. I think it's just... my opinion doesn't matter. Take this with a grain of salt. I think it's just taking the characters. It's a very glorified fan game that's non-canon, I think, is the best way to look at Security Breach, personally.
Which is why I'm not talking about it. So
no, that's fair.
Same with Help Wanted. Help Wanted wasn't as like big of a deal when it came out, and I kind of just wrote it off as pretty much a high budget fan game. But Security Breach was infuriating. Anyway, I've rambled long enough. Yeah, I'm conflicted by the way the story works, and as a fan, it was a little annoying, but
Big Dong Daddy Dom, I'm so sorry. Grand, your fetus. Sorry.
Now that I can describe the whole thing as that, I feel pretty confident it's that way. Obviously, as always, let me know in the description. I'm tired. Let me know in the comments if you disagree or if I got something wrong. I'm more than happy to be proven wrong on this. I just think this works best as a...
Whose hot gay dad was in this? I'm sorry, I'm not even listening to you anymore. I'm so sorry, I got distracted. Description,
I'm tired. Let me know in the comments if you disagree or if I got something wrong. I'm more than happy to be proven wrong on this. I just think this works best as a story, and I like the story that it's telling. So yeah, thank you so much to my subscribers. I think we're at 1.155 million, something like that. Like, man, you guys keep on killing it. I'm really like at a loss for words with all these because I don't know what to say because I don't deserve 12, and you've given me over 1 million, and it's a lot, and I appreciate it, and I'm forever grateful. So thank you for that. Thank you to all of my ex-patrons that you can see here. The Patreon is gone now, but these are all the people who supported me. or the top tier patrons that supported me, and thank you to all of my patrons who supported me, who allowed me to get to the spot that I'm at. I'm forever in your debt, and I appreciate it. And all this is possible thanks to you. Like I said, as soon as I turn off the recording on this, I'm going to send the files over, maybe do some editing, I don't know, and then start the VHS side of this.
Take a nap.
And then there'll be 2 separate uploads.
Take a nap.
But the VHS one should be shortly after this one is. So we'll see how that goes. But for now, I believe that should do it. So thank you for watching.
Thank you for
I
your
hope
video.
you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Yay! There was a lot that I didn't know, right? And I think I said that in the beginning, that there was stuff that I was definitely going to get wrong, stuff that either I had never heard or just remembered wrong, whatever. That was a lot. That was a lot. That was a great refresh. And then just teaching, learning the new bits, everything kind of in between that I either missed somehow entirely or I just had confused. I like that so very much. So much. Thank you so much. If you stuck around through the whole thing, please go watch it again on Wendigoon's channel. Because good Lord, the work and the effort. Poor guy needs a nap. I swear to God. Oh my. Please rest. I'm not sure if you did, but please rest. So please go check out Wendigoon. I very much appreciate him putting everything together, breaking it down, teaching me some stuff that I didn't know, and just, I don't know, like doing it for the love of the game in a sense, because like being into the world and wanting it to, you know, make sense not only to you, but like to new people, trying to explain it, trying to get people in and everything. I like that a lot, and he definitely deserves all the love and support. So go check him out. If you like my video, make sure you like and subscribe so I can see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.